Currently we are in section 8 and we are about to check out the second video of this section. So in this video we will check out what are constructors and its types such as default constructor, parameterized constructor, named constructor, and at last the constant constructor. So head back to your editor, and in the previous video we actually used our Dart pad like this. But I really don't like dark theme for recording purpose. So I will now use the IntelliJ IDE. You can still use the Dart pad for programming, which is really light and free. But for this, let me use the IntelliJ IDE, my favorite. Now firstly, let us define our video objective. And now let us accomplish our first objective of the default constructor. Now if you notice, while creating the object, we were calling the class as if it was a function, such as student followed by the parenthesis. Well, when we have a class name followed by the parenthesis which is acting like a function, so this is actually known as the default constructor. And the declaration of the default constructor is already there within our class, which you cannot see here because we don't have to declare it. For example, the default constructor, if you declare it, looks like this: student class name followed by parenthesis and then the curly bracket open and close. So this is actually our default constructor, which you don't require to declare it unless you want to write any code within this constructor. For example, if you write something here such as print, this is my default constructor, and then run your application, then let's see what happens. So here if you notice, before execution of any code, the code within the constructor is being executed for both the objects such as student1 and student2. So always remember that whatever code that you write within the constructor will always be first executed before any code execution, right? Perfect. So this is our default constructor, and again here this is our default constructor which we are calling it here. Perfect. And now let us come to our second one, that is parameterized constructor. So what is parameterized constructor? Now as the name suggests, if a constructor contains some parameter, then it is known as a parameterized constructor. For example, suppose if I have the constructor of student and suppose it contains some parameter such as int id or string name like this, then this type of constructor will be known as the parameterized constructor. And also note that whenever you declare any constructor, it does not have any return type. This is the property of a constructor and it is always same as that of the class name. Now how to use such constructor? So for that, what we can do here is that suppose here we are calling the default constructor. So here let us call our parameterized constructor by passing in the value of id as 45, like we pass any value within a function, and then the SAM. And now this 45 will fall here to this id and this SAM will fall here to the string name. Now how to assign this id to this id and this name to this name? So for that we have something called this keyword, this dot id equal to id, and again this dot name equal to name. Now please do not get confused here. This dot id refers to the id that we have defined here, and this id is actually this variable id that is locally defined, and similarly this dot name refers to the current instance variable name present here, and this name on the right is the local string name which we have defined as a parameter here. Now why I have used this keyword? Just because of the name conflict. Now if we have here suppose as underscore id, then we don't have to use this keyword here. id equal to underscore id will be enough to make compiler understand these two are different. Similarly here as well we can use underscore name and here underscore name, and on the left let us remove this keyword. But right now let us use this keyword because I like it that way. Perfect. Fine. And now what about these two codes, such as we are assigning the values here again, id equal to 45 and name as Sam. So now you can actually remove them. So if you run the code right now, you will get the same output, such as the id as 45 and name as Sam. So in this way we have actually reduced these two lines of code in case of student 2. Perfect. And now here if you notice we have some error. Let us hover over it. It says that the default constructor is already defined. So here we have another property such as within the same class you cannot have both of the default constructor and also the parameterized constructor. You can have either of them. That is, both of them all together at the same time are not allowed. So either I have to delete this or this. So right now I just want to delete this default constructor because we are already aware of this in this video as well as in the previous video. And now for the student one as well, it is now showing some error that this constructor does not exist. So here I will pass 23 comma let's say Peter. Perfect. And now we can remove it. Launch the application and in the output you will find the same output which we were getting earlier. Perfect. And now before moving on to our third objective, I would like to make a point here. This code can further be trimmed down such that instead of using this.id equal to id, we can simply use here as instead of int use this.id. And here as well instead of string name we can use this dot name like this. And now we can remove all of this code. And since we do not have any code within the constructor, so we can now remove all of this curly bracket and then use a semicolon. So with this we have actually trimmed down our code to a lot extent. Let us now launch our application and our code will work perfectly fine as it was before. So here this is our parameterized constructor. And now that we have covered our first and second objective, let us now move to our third objective of named constructor. So the syntax to define the name constructor is, let's check it out. So for that again the syntax is really simple. All you have to do is use the class name of student followed by dot and then your custom constructor name such as my custom constructor. Well, this name is actually user defined. You can name it as per your wish followed by parenthesis and then use the body of the constructor. And here you can write your own code. And in case you do not have any code within your constructor, then what you can do is just use the semicolon like we have done it here. Perfect. Right now I am just interested to write some code here such as this is my custom constructor. Perfect. And how to use this constructor? So for that what we can do here is let us create another student object such as var student3, then use the syntax of student dot and then use my custom constructor. So in this way we have again created one more object where student3 is a reference variable, and we have achieved this by using our custom constructor. And soon after this we can actually use student3 dot id equal to, let's assign it some value 54 and again name, let's call him Rahul. And if you want you can actually print these two values out by using this print statement. Copy it and paste it here. Use student3 and here again student3. Launch the application and there we go. These are the output that we have generated using our named constructor. I guess till now I was using the name of custom constructor, but it is actually the named constructor. That is our objective 3. Now similar to the parameterized constructor, you can even add the parameters to the named constructor such as this.id or this.name, something like this, and then pass in the parameter here directly. Now for the better understanding, let me do one thing. Let us create one more named constructor. Student dot my another constructor. Perfect. And now here you can use this dot id, this dot name. Perfect. And this dot id and this dot name refers to the instance variable that we have defined here. Perfect. And here again, if you have any body and if you have any code, then write it here, or just you can skip the body by using the semicolon here like we have done it here. And now using this constructor you can create one more student object, but this time this will be one line. Student dot my another named constructor, and here we have to pass in the value of id such as, let's say, random number of 87 and name as Paul. And now we can print out these values by using the print statement. Just for the sake of better understanding, student 4 and student 4 here as well. Launch the application, and there we go, our code is working perfectly fine, 87 and Paul. So this leads us to one more conclusion, that within one class you can have multiple named constructor, but you cannot have the parameterized constructor and the default constructor at the same time. So here let us write a comment statement of named constructor, copy it and paste it here as well. Perfect. And now let us move to our objective 4, that is constant constructor. Well, practically I did not find any great use of the constant constructor unless you are making any GUI application. So right now I will skip it. And if needed, I will cover it up in our upcoming videos. So as of now, please don't worry about constant constructor. These three are enough for object-oriented programming in Dart. So let us summarize the properties of the constructor. Well, the constructors are used to create objects, and within the constructor you can initialize your instance or the field variables. Like we did here, we used a constructor to initialize the instance variable of ID and name, here as well and here as well. Perfect. And then you cannot have both default and the parameterized constructor within the same class at the same time. It is not possible and not allowed. Moving, you can have as many as named constructor as you want to as per your wish. So you can have multiple named constructor within the same class.